Making clay charms using air dry clay. I love making things with clay. Here on Red Rocking Bird I love to share creativity and my air dry clay ideas with you. And today some cute clay charms. Many people use polymer clay when it comes to making clay charms, but here I'm using air dry clay, the standard white air dry clay. As with many of my air dry clay projects here on this channel, you don't need any fancy tools. And with this kind of clay project you really hardly use any clay at all, so out of a 1 kilogram block of air dry clay you can make so many clay charms. For this first one I flattened the clay with my fingers and used a scalpel to cut out the shape, so really simple, easy and quick to create. In this video I'll show you different ways to create lots of different charms, all very easy for beginners too. Here I have my regular air dry clay and all my new accessories that have just arrived. I've pressed the clay with my fingers to about 1 centimetre in thickness, and I'm using a regular table knife to cut the clay into a wedge, and this wedge is going to be a piece of cake. Using the scalpel edge I add some details in, and then using the point I add some little flecks in that are going to be the filling for the cake. All the ideas in this video are simple and easy for beginners to follow. Rolling out 2 thin coils of clay and then rolling them together makes a really good icing for the cake. This is a really nice miniatures project, and I do normally do lots of air dry clay pieces bigger than this, but when doing items like this I add a little bit of white glue and attach the air dry clay to this. This is going to be fine as I'm going to varnish these really well at the end. Making a really tiny ball of air dry clay and gluing this to the top as well, I then leave this to one side and fully dry in the air, no baking required. I have a small piece of air dry clay here, and using just my paintbrush I managed to roll this out really smoothly. Then the end of a matchstick I'm using for texture, and can you tell what I'm going to be making this one into? Taking the knife again I cut it into a square, and we're making another really lovely miniature for our clay charms. This one is a miniature waffle. So all these pieces are going to be dried. We just shape them all, leave them to dry fully in the air, and then we can paint these later on. I love to see what I have around my home to use as textures, and I encourage you to do the same as well. Be as creative as you wish, and you can also use some of the mini keychains and jump rings and all those different pieces within the clay if you wish, and I'll show you that too. I personally find air dry clay a lot easier to work with than polymer clay, so that's my personal preference, but if you prefer to use polymer clay, you can do all of these designs also with polymer clay, and then they just need baking. But I find air dry clay really forgiving, and I love to be creative with it. If it starts to dry in your hands a little bit, you can get a bit of water on your fingers and just smooth the clay out in this way. I've cut and shaped a simple heart, and then I have one of these mini keychains which are open jump rings, and I've pushed that into the clay, and then I want to seal it within there by just joining all the gaps in between, and then you can leave it to dry, but add any details you wish. This is going to be a little charm, a little heart charm with a key locket. So really simple, basic and easy to make. I've rolled my next piece of clay really quite thin, and I'm going to add the texture again like the waffle texture, and this time I'm making it into an ice cream cone. It's all about experimenting and playing, and I encourage you to do the same too, because if it does go wrong you can roll that clay back up and just start all over again, no problem at all. But here I have this grid of squares and then cutting this rounded triangular shape. Yes, I could make a template for this, but I like to wing it. Just make sure your 2 straight edges are the same length. Then I curl it around, and you want to overlap those 2 straight edges just slightly to make your lovely ice cream cone shape. Being nice and gentle not to lose that texture we've already added in. You can blend the clay on the inside, and I use the end of a paintbrush for this, and also use that to just make my shape exactly as I want it. At this stage I add a little bit of white glue on the inside as well, and this just lets it dry all together like we did with the little piece of cake on the left hand side here. I can then set this aside and let it dry, just the cone on its own, and then I'm going to take some more air dry clay and we're going to make some balls of ice cream to go in the top. Ice creams come in all shapes and sizes, so you really do whatever size you feel works for you, or if you're going to make some earrings you might want to make them a bit smaller. If you want to make a keychain you might like to make them a little bit larger, so you can vary your cone shape and everything with that as well. I've cut down one of my matchsticks, put a little glue on the end, and then place this in as a chocolate flake in the top of the ice cream. The matchsticks are definitely coming in handy in this project. You can also use them like this to add some texture to your ice cream. Hopefully so far you feel all of this is quite straightforward and easy. If you have a design and a shape you want to create, just break it down into shapes and then build from there, because these can all then be added together to make your final design. With the end of a paintbrush I'm making an indent into one of the ice cream scoops so both ice cream scoops can fit snugly together. I'm leaving these to dry separately. The mini screw eye pins that I ordered from Temu I can add in at this stage, adding just a little bit of white glue to keep them in place. Or you can add the findings at the end once everything is fully dried. But it is very easy to add them at this stage. It's easy to make little charm cupcakes without having a clay extruder. I just roll a coil of clay and then you just twirl the clay around in a loop, and there you have a really simple and easy frosting to your cupcake. You can either glue the top and the bottom together now or once dry. You can also get silicone molds to work the air dry clay into. This is a miniature Jammy Dodger cookie mold and it couldn't be easier to use. Molds are really good when you have a more complicated design and want to create that same design over and over again but really quickly. This clay is still lovely and soft, but as I said earlier, if you're struggling with it drying out a little bit, then just add a little bit of water on your fingers and smooth the clay that way. Once they're shaped and before they're dry, remove them from the mould and then you can make some more straight away. I set these aside and let them dry nice and flat, making any adjustments if you need to before they do dry. But all of these charms can be sanded with some sandpaper once they are fully dry. Once you get started with a miniatures clay project like this, there are so many different options you could make, and things become easy if you do break them down into shapes. Here is a miniature pizza slice, and I've just rolled over that crust, and there we have a cute piece of pizza. You can add some toppings on there as well if you wish. Also adding in a screw eye pin at this stage with a little bit of glue on the end. So go ahead, make lots of air dry clay miniatures till your heart's content. There are so many possibilities and I absolutely love making these. Let them dry fully, I'd always say for 24 hours, and then we can get on to painting them. For me, a nice fine paintbrush and some acrylic paint works really well. Did you guess what my very first design was going to be? Here is a bit more of a clue. You can see it in the back there. It was a little puppy dog, and then another one here of a little kitten. There are so many possibilities. Sit down, relax, and enjoy the painting process. I'm really happy with how my ice cream cones have dried, so I'm going to use a nice caramelly colour and I'm going to paint these. So this is acrylic paint, and make sure you paint every bit of the surface, inside and out. And also those little waffles are also painted in this same colour. Once that first coat of paint is fully dried, I have a slightly darker than the caramel colour and a very tiny bit on my brush, and I'm dry brushing that over the top of the cones. making sure I wash my paintbrush and dry it really well in between colours. The ice cream can be absolutely any flavour you wish. Ooh, this one's going to be strawberries and cream, I think. I really enjoy this part of the process and really get in with all those lovely little details. I have a few different flavoured cakes on the go, and I'm painting the jam of the Jammy Dodger. Then once all the paint is fully dried, I can assemble all the parts together if they need assembly. So I add some of the white glue inside the cone. Then my first scoop of ice cream, placing it round the way you want it. Add a bit more glue into the indent of the other one. I'm adding the screw eye pin now, as I didn't add it at the beginning, just in case I changed my mind where I wanted it to be. And so adding the hole for the eyelet you can do once everything's fully dry. And so I do this with a mini handheld drill. Once all the clay charms are fully painted and fully dry, you then want to add some sort of varnish or top coat over the top. For this I like to use a UV resin, but you use some varnish if that's what you have. The UV resin then goes under the UV lamp. It really is really easy. Prise the rings apart, add your charms in and then add them to the necklace. Super easy and quick and lots of fun, and maybe interchangeable as well if you'd like to do that if these are for yourself. But really wonderful gifts these would make, and you could use these little charms on bracelets, necklaces, keychains and however else you wish. They really are super cute, and I think one of my favourite has to be the ice cream cones, and not too difficult to make too. And the UV resin works really well, it's super shiny on these, and I think it gives them that really lovely professional look. So you could make lots of keychains and lots of items to sell in a little shop. And from air dry clay, I think these have worked out really well. The UV resin definitely gives them that bit of strength as well. Which designs would you make first and which are your favourite? Please do let me know in the comments below. Bye for now, and I'll see you in the next video.